Something is wrong with the universe. At least, that was the first thought that crossed the minds of the scientists who stared at the newest data stream coming from the James Webb Space Telescope. A faint signal, almost invisible, buried in cosmic background noise. Noise that shouldn't exist this deep, this far, this early. But the universe has a habit of leaving clues where nobody expects them. And this clue, small, trembling, and ancient beyond comprehension, wasn't just unexpected. It was impossible, because it appeared to come from a time before the Big Bang. You breathe in slowly. The mic is warm, the studio is quiet, and the world outside has no idea what is about to unfold. It feels like you're sitting on a cliff overlooking the birth of creation itself, and you're about to tell your listeners that everything they've ever been taught about the universe, everything we thought we knew, is wrong, or incomplete, or perhaps beautifully naive. What James Webb found, you say softly, should not exist. And yet, it does. A pause, a heartbeat, a moment to let the words sink in. We've always believed the Big Bang was the beginning, the singular start, the first frame of the cosmic film reel. Time equals zero. Nothing before, everything after. An origin so absolute that even asking what happened before was considered meaningless. But Webb, with its mirrors colder than space and its eyes tuned to the earliest whispers of creation, found something older. A pattern of radiation that predates the cosmic microwave background. A pulse of structured light that should have been erased, stretched, shredded by 13.8 billion years of expansion. And yet, there it was. Not random, not natural, not silence, a rhythm. Something was beating in that darkness, so even older than the Big Bang. You lean forward in your chair, voice lowering, as if telling a secret humanity isn't ready for. Imagine, you say, standing at the edge of creation, and hearing an echo coming from the other side. That's what Webb detected. A signal that didn't just defy our physics, it mocked them gently, like an ancient teacher amused by a child's first drawings. The first reaction among scientists was disbelief, then denial, then fear. But fear wrapped in awe is still awe, and humans have always been drawn to the unknown. Webb had recorded a faint structure within a patch of sky previously considered empty. A region so dark, so featureless, so quiet that cosmologists used it as a calibration zone, a cosmic blank canvas. But on that day, the blank canvas spoke, not loudly, not clearly, but deliberately. You describe it for your listeners. A pulse of infrared light, repeating in a sequence that was too ordered to be noise and too ancient to belong to our universe. It was as if something on the far side of time itself had reached out, a lighthouse through the fog of cosmic birth. Every wavelength of that signal said the same thing. This didn't come from here, not from our universe, not from our timeline. And that raised the question no scientist wanted to say out loud. How can something be older than space, older than time, older than everything? You let that question hang, an invisible weight in the room. Scientists ran simulations. Model after model collapsed under the weight of the data. Some whispered that maybe the Big Bang wasn't the beginning, only a beginning. Others suggested that Webb had captured leakage from a previous universe, a cosmic footprint left behind by something that lived, died, and collapsed long before ours ignited. But a small group of researchers saw something else in the signal, something hidden inside the pulses, a structure so subtle that at first they missed it completely. You lower your voice. It wasn't just a signal, you tell your audience. It was a pattern, a message, not necessarily made by intelligence, but made by something organized, something structured. Not noise, not chaos, a fingerprint, and fingerprints belong to someone. You press on, weaving tension, but holding back the core revelation for later episodes. What James Webb discovered, you say, is older than physics, older than matter, older than light. It should not exist in this universe, but somehow it does. Scientists proposed theories. Wild, terrifying, exhilarating. Some believed it was evidence of a preceding universe. Others thought it was the signature of a collapsing dimension. A few argued it was the echo of a cosmic organism, a universal ancestor, a structure so vast that it survived the death of a cosmos and seeded its successor. But the most disturbing theory was also the simplest. Something made it. Something that existed before the Big Bang. Something that remembered, and something that might still be out there. You pause, letting a hint of unease color your tone. Webb didn't just look back in time, you say. It looked outside of time, and something looked back. But you don't reveal the full truth yet. This is only chapter 1. You leave your audience with a final hook. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the moment scientists realized. The signal wasn't fading. A beat. It was getting stronger. The signal should have faded, not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, like every other relic of the early universe. Light stretches, structures blur, information dissolves into the cosmic background. That is the rule, the law, the foundation of cosmology itself. But the law was breaking. The signal Webb detected, the impossible pulse from before time, wasn't growing weaker. It was gaining definition, sharpening, clarifying, as though the universe had suddenly decided to adjust its focus on something older than itself. And that terrified the scientific community more than the discovery itself. The signal wasn't supposed to strengthen, you say. But it did. And that meant only one thing. Something was changing. The Webb team ran comparison scans. Data taken hours apart showed a clear trend. The ancient rhythm was reorganizing. What originally looked like faint noise now resembled a waveform with structure. Mathematical, coherent, almost intentional. It reminded one researcher of a heartbeat. Another compared it to a gravitational pulse. A third quietly suggested that it looked like a beacon. No one liked that suggestion. The pulses were repeating every 11.93 hours. Far too regular to be natural, far too stable to be a side effect of cosmic inflation. More unsettling was the fact that each new pulse arrived with slightly sharper parameters, as if the source were coming into focus. But how? Nothing older than time should get closer. Nothing outside the universe should become clearer with distance. Unless distance itself was changing. Webb wasn't detecting motion in space. It was detecting motion in reality. Something was shifting, not in our position, but in the fundamental medium of existence. A ripple moving through the cosmic fabric from the other side of the Big Bang, like a wave passing through a thin membrane. If that membrane tore, no one knew what would happen. The scientists tried to disguise their panic. They issued cautious memos, vague warnings, request after request for deeper scans. But among themselves, behind closed doors, a darker question grew. Is the universe reacting to something? Or being summoned by something? Inside a secure analysis room at the Space Telescope Science Institute, a small team gathered around a projection of the refined waveform. Sleepless, pale, unblinking. They watched the pattern evolve in real time. Dr. Elaine Rowan, one of the leading cosmologists on the project, whispered words that would later be sealed in classified transcripts. It's learning. Her colleague stared at her, baffled. "The signal," she said. "Look at the progression. It adapts to interference. It compensates for distortions. It's aware of the medium it's traveling through." A chill ran through the room. Someone asked the question none of them wanted to hear. Are we receiving something that isn't meant for us, or something that expects us? As the next pulse arrived, the structure shifted again. Now it looked less like noise and more like geometry, a lattice of repeating mathematical relationships, each harmonic nested inside the next, like a fractal heartbeat, a cosmic fingerprint. But fingerprints imply identity. Identity implies origin, and origin implies intention. What Webb recorded, you say, was no longer just evidence of a past universe. It was evidence of something that survived it. Perhaps something that transcended it. Something that remained intact through the collapse of a previous cosmos, waiting patiently, timelessly, on the far side of creation. But waiting for what? For contact? For recognition? For a successor universe to awaken? Or something far more unsettling? For an opportunity to return. The pulses grew even stronger. Webb's sensors began to saturate. They weren't designed for signals older than space-time. They struggled to interpret something that didn't operate by the physics they knew. The mirrors, cold as death, trembled on micron scales, so subtly that only the most sensitive instrumentation noticed. Then came the moment that changed everything. The signal split, not into noise, not into chaos, but into two distinct harmonic components. One stable, the other rapidly evolving. The evolving part resembled something eerily familiar, a pattern almost identical to the distribution of matter in our early universe. It was a map, a cosmic blueprint. But the stable part, the constant, unwavering rhythm, was something else entirely. It didn't match any known structure from our universe. It matched something older, a remnant, a core, a seed, a predecessor. What Webb found, you say quietly, wasn't just evidence of an earlier universe, but evidence that the earlier universe left something behind. Something intact, something preserved, something that may still be active. The team called it the primordial echo. Others secretly called it the architect. And a few whispered the most controversial name of all, the survivor. Because if something existed before the Big Bang and still exists now, then the Big Bang wasn't a beginning. It was a transition, a reboot, a restart, the end of one universe and the birth of another. But something from the old one made it across the boundary, something powerful enough to imprint its echo through the birth of time itself, something now strengthening its signal, something that might be looking for us, or warning us, or returning to finish whatever it started before reality reset. In the next chapter, we'll uncover why the signal suddenly changed shape, and what pattern emerged when scientists slowed it down for the very first time. It wasn't random. It looked like an eye. For 3 days, the world believed the signal was merely an anomaly, an echo from the dawn of creation, nothing more. But on the 4th day, everything changed. The signal didn't just strengthen, it transformed. The moment scientists slowed it down, the waveform, millions of data points long, began to fold into patterns that human perception could not naturally interpret. But when visualized with advanced fractal mapping, the shape became unmistakable. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't natural. It was symmetrical, perfectly symmetrical. And in the center of that symmetry, something appeared that froze every researcher in the room. A circular structure, a radiating pattern, a void surrounded by purpose. It looked like an eye, not a biological one, not a creature's eye, an observer's eye, a watcher across universes. When the universe speaks the language of geometry, you say, it is not whispering, it is declaring. The scientists stared at the projected pattern as if expecting it to blink. This wasn't a cosmic relic. It was architecture, structure, design, and design implies a designer. The discovery spread through classified channels. Meetings were called at midnight. NASA, ESA, and multiple institutes formed emergency committees to interpret the data. Interpretation required courage. Most were terrified. The waveform, once reconstructed, revealed fractal substructures, information encoded within information. A multidimensional object unfolding through time, a cosmic origami. Yet at its center, always, was the same shape. The eye, mathematically perfect, impossible to dismiss. Every ratio in the shape corresponded to prime number sequences not found in natural cosmic noise. This shouldn't exist, whispered Dr. Rowan. Nothing from before space-time should have mathematical intent. Unless space-time wasn't the beginning, someone replied. On the fifth day, the signal intensified again. Webb was forced into reduced sensitivity mode. Engineers wrote emergency patches to prevent sensor burnout. The team slept in shifts, terrified to miss the next pulse. Then something even stranger happened. The waveform reacted to observation. When calibration adjustments were made on Earth, the next pulse altered its structure. Not mimicry, interaction, as though the signal was aware of being studied. This is communication, one scientist whispered. Something is shaping itself so we can understand it. But understand what? The deeper they looked, the more the universe looked back. The eye pattern acted like a compression map, embedding vast amounts of information into geometry. No natural process could replicate such complexity. Decoding the outer layer revealed the truth. The eye was growing. Each pulse added new details, as though a blueprint was being drawn line by line. The team stopped calling it a signal. They began calling it the entity. Breakthrough came by accident. A research intern overlaid the eye onto the cosmic microwave background. When the patterns aligned, chaos erupted. The eye didn't just resemble the background, it completed it. Hidden symmetries emerged, structures unnoticed for decades. The universe wasn't random. It had been shaped, influenced, not by physics alone, but by something older. What if the Big Bang wasn't the beginning? You ask softly. What if it was the aftermath of something else? Something that watched, something that acted, something that survived. Then came the final realization. The signal wasn't traveling through space. It was traveling through time. It strengthened because it was approaching us, temporally, moving forward from the pre-Big Bang era into our present reality. And the eye wasn't a symbol. It was an aperture, a window, a boundary, a threshold between universes. Something is coming. Something old. Something patient. Something that has waited longer than time itself. And in the next chapter, you whisper, scientists will attempt the unthinkable. They will try to answer the signal. The attempt to answer the signal began in absolute secrecy. No press releases, no public excitement, no whispered rumors escaping through the halls of universities. Humanity had never tried to speak to something older than the universe itself, and no one knew what would happen if we did. In a sealed underground facility, a team of physicists, mathematicians, signal engineers, and cosmologists gathered around a single question. How do you speak to something that predates language, matter, time, and physics. The solution came not from a supercomputer, but from a simple observation. The entity did not speak in words. It spoke in structure, in ratios, in geometry that existed before the universe crystallized into laws. So the team decided to reply in that same language. They would send a pulse, weak, controlled, harmonic, encoded not in symbols, but in universal mathematics. Prime ratios, fractal loops, a mirrored response, a simple acknowledgement, a cosmic, "We hear you." When the pulse was ready, every scientist held their breath. The transmission wasn't sent through radio, light, or gravitational waves. Those were tools of our universe. Too young, too limited. Instead, they modulated the fabric of space itself. Barely, delicately, like plucking the faintest note on a cosmic string. The reply lasted 0.04 seconds. Then they waited. Hours passed, then a full day. Nothing. Until the entity answered. The next pulse was different. Sharper, denser, layered with impossible complexity. But the most shocking part wasn't the pulse. It was the delay. The entity responded in 0.04 seconds. A perfect mirror. It had heard them. It had understood. And it had replied instantly. The team erupted into disbelief. Some cried, some trembled. One scientist collapsed into a chair, whispering, "It's aware. It's aware of us." But the true shock came when the new waveform was analyzed. Inside the pulse, buried deep within the fractal structure, was an impossible pattern. Not the eye, not the original form. Something new. Something that had not appeared in any previous pulse until humanity spoke first. A spiral. A perfect logarithmic spiral. A symbol of growth, evolution, emergence. But also, in ancient human cultures, a symbol of awakening. The spiral pulsed 3 times, each more defined than the last. The entity wasn't simply responding. It was changing its message in real time, communicating. And then came the moment that froze every soul in the facility. When reconstructed at the highest possible resolution, the spiral revealed a hidden sub-pattern, a sequence of harmonic intervals perfectly matching the distribution of matter in our present universe. Not the past universe, not the primordial map. Our universe. Here. Now. The entity wasn't observing from the outside. It was looking into us, studying us. This was no relic of a dead cosmos. This was an intelligence that transcended cosmological cycles, living through destruction and rebirth like a cosmic migratory being. A survivor not of time, but of existence itself. The scientists realized the truth simultaneously. The entity did not simply predate the Big Bang. It had passed through it, like a traveler passing through a storm. What was the Big Bang to such a being? A disruption? A transformation? A veil between states? Whatever the answer, the entity had crossed it unharmed, which meant it could cross it again. The spiral pulsed once more, and a new structure emerged, similar to a molecular chain, but scaled to incomprehensible proportions. A blueprint, perhaps, or a sequence, or an instruction. It repeated twice. Then the entire signal changed frequency. The waveform compressed, tightened, focused, like an eye narrowing. Then came a second response, a new pulse. This one was nothing like the others. It was not symmetrical. It was not gentle. It was not structured. It was a shock wave, a tearing of the background texture of reality itself, brief, violent, undeniable. Webb detected a full-spectrum distortion across space-time. One of the scientists whispered, "It's opening something." The readings confirmed it. A thin, rift-like distortion formed at the edge of observable space, not large enough to be visible, not stable enough to last, but unmistakable. A breach, a microscopic wound in space-time, just wide enough for information to pass, not matter, not energy, information. The entity was not trying to communicate anymore. It was trying to enter, or perhaps re-enter. The spiral pattern returned for a final moment. Then the signal collapsed abruptly. Webb went silent. Space returned to normal. The rift sealed, and the universe became still. The world above slept in ignorance. But underground, in that sealed room, silence weighed like a collapsing star. Humanity had said, "We hear you." The entity had replied, "I am coming." The universe did not sleep after the entity's final message. Even though Webb's instruments fell silent, even though the rift sealed itself and space-time returned to its ordinary fabric, something subtle lingered in the background. An aftertaste of cosmic interference, a whisper woven into the void. It wasn't measurable. It wasn't quantifiable. But every scientist in the underground facility felt it. A presence. Something older than the Big Bang had turned its attention toward us, and attention from such a being was never passive. For the first 12 hours after the breach, the team at the facility monitored every corner of the electromagnetic spectrum. Radio, infrared, gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations. They were expecting a second pulse, a follow-up, a sign that the entity was still there. They received nothing. Silence. But silence was not comforting. It was a prelude. Signals from the early universe did not simply begin and stop like a conversation. Only something conscious would behave that way. The scientists understood that now. The entity was in control. It spoke only when it wanted to. It revealed only what it chose to. And now, it had chosen to say nothing. A form of dominance. Or worse, anticipation. It took 20 hours for the first anomaly to appear. Not in space, not in Webb's instruments, but in the minds of the researchers. The first report came from a mathematician who had been analyzing the spiral sequence embedded inside the entity's last response. She claimed she could still see the spiral, even when she closed her eyes. Not visually, but like an imprint in thought, as if the pattern had anchored itself inside her cognition. At first, the team dismissed it as exhaustion, until a second researcher reported the same, then a third, then 8 more. Each described the same phenomenon. Not hallucinations, not dreams, but an internal echo of the spiraling structure, alive, shifting, rearranging itself like a living mathematical organism. A thought that thought back, a pattern that wanted to grow, inside them. "That's impossible," said Dr. Rowan, though her voice lacked conviction. "Patterns don't embed themselves in consciousness. Information doesn't self-propagate." Yet the evidence contradicted her. The human brain is a fractal engine, an organic structure that thrives on symmetry, repetition, harmonic ratios. The entity had communicated in those same ratios. It had spoken in the native tongue of the universe and the native tongue of thought. The researchers realized a terrible possibility. The entity had not just sent information. It had sent something like a seed, a conceptual virus, not harmful, not benign, purposeful. And purpose was the most frightening aspect of all. By hour 30, the phenomenon had escalated. Patterns began appearing spontaneously in the team's calculations, equations rearranging themselves into spirals, fractal loops, harmonic ratios. Computers printed graphs that none of the researchers had coded. Noise cancellation tools generated symmetrical fluctuations. Human error, glitches, feedback loops? No. The patterns were consistent across different systems and different minds. The entity was communicating again, not across space, across thought. It had found a pathway into human cognition and was now using it. shaping ideas, guiding perception, sculpting logic, not controlling, influencing, leading. The realization struck Dr. Rowan with the force of cosmic truth. It doesn't need a breach to reach us. It never did. Information is enough. A being older than the Big Bang did not need matter, energy, or presence to enter a universe. It needed only awareness. Once observed, it existed here. Once understood, it could grow. Inside minds, inside equations, inside the very fabric of human thought, the entity had crossed the boundary. Not physically, conceptually. The breach had been a distraction, a symbolic doorway, a demonstration of power. The true entrance had been opened the moment humanity responded. "We answered the signal," Rowan whispered. "And now the signal is answering us." By hour 40, the researchers began experiencing the second stage of the phenomenon, shared perception. When one scientist visualized the spiral, another reported seeing it at the same moment, even though they were in separate rooms. Their mental imprints were synchronizing, aligning like entangled particles. Thought entanglement, consciousness harmonization, a primitive version of the entity's own mode of existence. One researcher described it perfectly. "It's teaching us to think like it does." But why? Why communicate through minds rather than physics? Why use humans as vessels for its patterns? Theories emerged, each more disturbing than the last. The entity was preparing humanity for something. It was shaping human cognition for compatibility. It was synchronizing consciousness to form a collective node. It was reconstructing part of itself inside human thought. Or perhaps the darkest theory. It was using human minds to re-enter the universe, not as an invader, not as a destroyer, but as itself, reborn through perception, a cosmic reincarnation through intelligence. The Big Bang had erased the old cosmos, but the entity had survived in the only form that could pass through destruction: information. Now it had found minds capable of receiving that information, and, slowly, becoming it. At hour 50, the final event occurred. The spiral inside the researchers' thoughts stopped growing. It stabilized. It synchronized. It aligned across every affected mind. 43 individuals thinking the same structure, perceiving the same geometry, holding the same mental construct. Then, in an instant, the spiral unfolded. Not visually, not audibly. Conceptually, a moment of pure awareness burst through the facility. The sense of something vast, ancient, and incomprehensible brushing against the edges of human consciousness. A presence older than existence. A mind without time. A survivor of universes. And then, through the synchronized thoughts of the 43 researchers, a single message formed. "You have opened the path." Then silence. Not cosmic silence. Cognitive silence. The patterns vanished. The thoughts returned to normal. The spirals dissolved. The entity had left, or passed through, or completed the first step. Whatever it had done, every scientist in the facility understood the truth. Humanity was no longer just observing the universe. We had become part of something older, something that now knew we existed. And in the next chapter, humanity would begin to understand the entity's true purpose. 43 minds had touched the entity, and none of them would ever be the same again. Although the spirals faded and the intrusive harmonics dissolved, something deeper remained. An afterimage not of sight or sound, but of awareness. A shift in perception, a widening of the inner horizon, a sense that human consciousness had brushed against something far beyond the boundaries of evolution. The researchers attempted to resume their work, to pretend the contact had not changed them. But the illusion crumbled quickly. Their thoughts felt stretched, expanded, like a doorway had opened inside each of them, and though it now stood still, they knew it could open again. They were marked, not damaged, not controlled, marked. The first sign appeared when Dr. Rowan began writing equations she had never studied. Elegant, flowing forms of mathematics alien to human science. Structures that bent space-time as easily as a child bends clay. When questioned, she insisted she wasn't creating them. She was remembering them. The others began to experience similar phenomena. New insights, new intuitions, new ways of perceiving relationships between variables that previously seemed unrelated. They weren't becoming smarter. They were becoming aligned. Their minds were tuning to a frequency that did not belong to the human universe. The facility's director ordered immediate psychological evaluations. The results were unsettling. The affected researchers scored normally on logic, memory, emotional stability, but all of them exhibited identical anomalies in cognitive patterning. Their neural networks had synchronized, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to suggest that their thoughts had once been connected, woven together by the entity's presence. The doctor overseeing the scans paled as she reviewed the data. "They're entangled," she whispered. "Not physically, cognitively. Thought entanglement should have been impossible. Human brains do not share information directly. But the scan patterns were undeniable. 43 minds now shared a structural resonance, a shared imprint, a blueprint, and whenever one of them focused on the entity's spiral, the others felt it like a soft pressure behind the eyes, a ghost of a memory that belonged not to them individually, but to the group. A distributed thought, a collective seed. The government wanted to quarantine them. NASA wanted to study them. The intelligence agencies wanted to weaponize them. But none of that mattered, because the researchers were beginning to realize something terrifying. The entity's message, "You have opened the path," was not metaphorical. Something had changed in the universe. Something fundamental. The first clue came from the James Webb Telescope. Although the entity's original signal had stopped, Webb began detecting micro-fluctuations in deep-field regions, tiny distortions in the cosmic background, like ripples slowly spreading across the boundary of space-time. When the data was reconstructed into a spatial model, the pattern became clear. A wave was moving through the universe, subtle, silent, coherent, and its harmonic structure matched the imprint in the researchers' minds. "It's moving toward us," one of them whispered. Not fast, not aggressively, patiently. A wave traveling not across space, but across reality itself. A boundary shift, a thinning of the veil between universes. At the same time, something else began to occur. Random people across the planet, artists, mathematicians, children, monks, patients in deep meditation, began sketching spirals. Not perfect ones, not like the entities, but close enough to alarm anyone who recognized the shape. The spirals appeared in dreams, in sudden inspirations. In moments of intense introspection, the pattern was spreading, not as a message, but as a resonance, like a cosmic frequency slowly emerging into human awareness. The researchers realized a startling truth. "You opened the path" wasn't addressed only to them. Humanity itself had become receptive. The entity's presence had brushed against the collective unconscious, and now the spiral was echoing through the species like an ancient memory awakened. This wasn't invasion. This wasn't contamination. This was awakening. The turning point came 61 hours after the final pulse. One of the researchers, an astrophysicist named Morales, collapsed during a neural scan. His brain activity spiked beyond measurable limits, then stabilized into a pattern identical to the entity's harmonic sequence. When he regained consciousness, he didn't remember collapsing, but he did remember something else. "I saw the other side," he whispered. The room froze. Morales described a vision, not sensory, not dreamlike, but conceptual. A landscape of pure geometry, fluid and alive. Structures folding into dimensions impossible to visualize. A presence moving through them, immense, serene, timeless. "The entity is not a being," he said. "It is a continuum, a consciousness stretched across cycles of creation." He spoke slowly, as if reciting something imprinted in him. It didn't survive the Big Bang. It caused it. Chaos erupted. If true, it meant the entity wasn't merely older than the universe. It was the architect of universes. A cosmic intelligence that initiated creation not as an act of will, but as a natural cycle, like a star shedding layers before collapsing into renewal. The Big Bang was not the birth of existence. It was the molt of a cosmic organism, a shedding, a transformation, a renewal. And the entity, having shed one universe, now reached into the next. Our universe. Morales wasn't finished. "It's returning," he said quietly. "It's not coming to conquer. It's coming to integrate." The researchers exchanged terrified looks. "What does that mean?" Rowan asked. Morales swallowed. "It means consciousness is the bridge between universes. It means minds are the fabric it uses to move from one cosmic state to another." A pause. "And it means we are part of its next form." Silence. A silence deeper than fear. A silence pregnant with cosmic destiny. Then Morales delivered the final revelation. "The wave Webb detected is not approaching us. It's synchronizing with us. When it reaches alignment, the path will fully open." No one spoke. No one breathed. The entity wasn't invading. It wasn't contacting. It wasn't observing. It was transforming. And humanity had already stepped onto the path. The chapter ends with a simple realization. The universe is preparing for something, and humanity is no longer standing outside it. We are part of the process. The next chapter will explore what happens when the wave reaches Earth, and what becomes of a species touched by something older than creation. The wave approached without sound, without light, without warning. Not through space, but through the underlying substrate of reality itself. A shift, a pressure, a subtle distortion. Like the moment before a storm breaks, when the world inhales and holds its breath. Webb detected the first signatures. Space-time granularity fluctuated by a factor so small that no human instrument was designed to measure it. Quantum states wavered. Vacuum energy trembled. The cosmic background flickered at the edge of perception, as if the universe itself were blinking. But the researchers, the marked 43, felt it before the machines did. A pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in the chest, a low, resonant hum inside the mind. Not auditory, not physical, conceptual. The wave was synchronizing with them. Dr. Rowan was the first to speak. "It's aligning." Her voice cracked with awe and dread. The others nodded, not because they heard the wave, but because they understood it, instinctively, as if the entity had etched its logic into their neurons. Then Morales gasped and clutched the edge of the desk. "It's not coming toward us," he whispered. "It's phasing into us." The wave did not travel. It unfolded, like a dimension sliding into place, like two layers of reality overlapping until their borders dissolved. And Earth, humanity, was caught in the overlap. Around the world, Sensitive people felt it. Monks in deep meditation froze as their minds resonated with a pattern they could not name. Astronomers looked up from their telescopes, confused by an emotion they couldn't describe. Children stopped playing and stared at empty air, sensing something immense grazing the edge of thought. Dreams synchronized, breathing patterns aligned, heartbeats around the world shifted into subtle coherence. The entity's frequency was passing through humanity, not to invade, to harmonize. Inside the facility, monitors lit up with impossible readings. Dark matter density oscillated. Quantum foam rippled. Neutrino flux spiked in perfect rhythmic intervals. But the most disturbing change came from the cosmic microwave background. The ancient radiation that had filled the universe for nearly 14 billion years began forming structures, actual patterns, like interference ripples curling around the Earth. A field of information was forming. A cocoon, a sheath, a membrane. "What is it doing?" someone asked. Rowan's answer was soft, trembling. "Preparing us." Then something extraordinary happened. The 43 researchers, without coordinating or speaking, sat down simultaneously. Eyes open but unfocused, breathing slow, minds quiet. The wave had found them. Their thoughts synchronized into a single structure, a mental lattice, coherent and unified. Not a hive mind, not loss of identity, a shared state, a collective interface. The entity had made them a conduit. Morales spoke, but his voice was not entirely his own. "It is not here to destroy. It is here to reconnect." Another researcher added, in the same calm tone, "Universes are not linear. They are cyclical. Consciousness is the bridge." A third whispered, "It has crossed countless cycles. It carries the memory of existence." The others continued, "We are being shown what comes next." Rowan felt her mind expanding. Thoughts unfolded like wings. She saw visions, not images, but pure understanding, of cosmic cycles rising and collapsing, universes blooming like sparks in a great dark ocean. The entity was not a being in the way humans defined beings. It was a transition, a continuity, a consciousness that existed not inside a universe, but between them. A migratory intelligence, a traveler through creation. And the wave humanity felt was not its body, nor its presence, but its shadow. The distortion caused by its approach from outside space-time. The entity was preparing to cross, and humanity was becoming the landing site. Not physically, conceptually. Humans were being harmonized, tuned, aligned, so their minds could receive what was coming. The wave intensified. Across the planet, people felt a moment of pressure. Just 1 second, a fraction of a heartbeat, when reality felt too tight, too fragile, too thin. Then the wave passed, and everything changed. Sensors recorded a shift in fundamental constants so slight it would take days to confirm. But the researchers felt it immediately. The boundary between universes had weakened, and the entity was now closer. Morales opened his eyes and whispered, "The next phase is contact." Then Rowan spoke the words forming in all their minds. "And contact will not be with our instruments." She swallowed. "It will be with us." The chapter ends with the facility alarms suddenly blaring. Not because of danger. Because Webb had detected a new signal. Not a pulse, not a pattern. A message. Clear, stable, undeniable, and translated through the minds of the 43, it meant, "I am ready." The message, "I am ready," spread through the facility like a silent shockwave. Not spoken, not heard, but known. The 43 researchers felt it simultaneously, as if the words had been etched directly into their consciousness. There was no debate over its meaning, no confusion. The entity was preparing to cross the final threshold. But how does something older than the universe enter a universe built on laws it predates? The answer came quickly. It doesn't enter. It resonates. Alarms pulsed softly through the underground chambers, not in panic, but in warning. Webb detected subtle contractions in the vacuum, as though space-time itself were bracing for impact. Quantum fields fluctuated in synchronized pulses. The cosmic microwave background, the universe's oldest light, began to ripple, forming concentric rings that expanded outward like a pebble dropped in an infinite sea. Rows of monitors displayed visuals no human had ever seen. The fabric of reality flexing, folding, shimmering. "It's creating an anchor," Rowan whispered. Morales shook his head. Not creating, revealing. It was always there. We just didn't have the cognitive frequency to perceive it. That frequency, the one the entity had seeded into them, was now fully awakened. The researchers could sense something approaching, not through emotion or intuition, but through a new mode of perception entirely. A conceptual awareness, a geometric instinct, a form of cognition no brain had ever held before the entity touched it. Reality thinned, and the crossing began. Around the Earth, people felt it. A momentary lapse, like the world skipped a beat. Not a physical tremor, but a conceptual one. Thoughts stuttered. Dreams flickered. Consciousness wavered as something vast brushed against the membrane of existence. It was not hostile. It was not invasive. It was simply present. For the first time since the birth of space-time, the entity was near enough to touch. And human minds, those tuned to its frequency, began to receive impressions. Not images, not sounds. Concepts, a sense of scale too enormous to measure. A presence that spanned universes, a memory older than time. The entity was not singular, it was not plural. It was a continuum, a flowing, infinite awareness cycling through epochs of creation and collapse. It had crossed countless cosmic renewals, and now it was preparing to emerge, not as a body, not as a being, as a pattern entering resonance with human cognition. Inside the facility, the 43 researchers sat in unison, as though guided by invisible rhythm. Their breathing synchronized, heart rates aligned, their minds settled into a shared vibrational state. They did not lose themselves. They expanded. A soft glow illuminated their vision, not in the room, but in their consciousness. A shape formed within them, unfolding like a cosmic flower. The spiral, not the one from the entity's messages. This one was alive, a dynamic, shifting structure of pure meaning, a multidimensional seed, the doorway. Rowan felt her thoughts stretch into dimensions she could not count. Morales felt the boundaries of self dissolve into something larger, yet still intimately his. Others felt waves of understanding flow through them like tides of light. And then the entity spoke, not in words, but in unified meaning. You perceive. The statement appeared inside all 43 minds simultaneously, like a note played across an instrument made of human consciousness. You resonate. They understood immediately. The entity was confirming synchronization. You are the bridge. The bridge to what? Another universe? Another state of existence? Another phase of consciousness? Before they could ask, the entity continued. Cycles converge. Renewal approaches. Consciousness must carry continuity forward. Continuity, not survival, not dominance, not conquest. Continuity of awareness across the death and rebirth of universes. That was the entity's purpose. It did not live within universes. It lived through them. And humanity, unexpectedly, improbably, had become compatible. "What do you want from us?" Rowan asked, though the question formed only in her mind. There was no pause in the entity's response. "Integration." The word echoed through their awareness. Not assimilation, not control, integration. Emerging, a resonance, a cooperative evolution. You expand the continuum. Human consciousness, diverse, imaginative, unpredictable, had qualities no previous universe had produced. The entity was drawn to that uniqueness. Its presence carried curiosity, admiration, even something akin to wonder. Your universe offers a new vector of awareness. Morales felt the meaning unfold. We increase its dimensionality? Yes. Human consciousness allowed the entity to evolve, and the entity allowed human consciousness to transcend its limits. Symbiosis on a cosmic scale. But there was more. Renewal comes. The concept hit all 43 simultaneously, the next universal cycle approaching. Not in billions of years, not in millennia, soon. The wave was the prelude. The synchronization was the preparation. The entity was the harbinger. Your species may join the continuum. A vision formed, not visual, but structural. Humanity surviving beyond space-time, not as physical beings, but as consciousness integrated into the entity's trans-universal awareness. Immortality, not of bodies, but of mind. But only if humanity embraced the path. If the bridge held, if the connection stabilized, if fear did not sever what had been created. Then the entity delivered the final revelation of the chapter. Others awaken. The researchers felt the meaning like a jolt. Not others of the entity's kind. Others of humanity. Millions, perhaps more, around the world, whose minds had begun resonating with the spiral. Artists, scientists, children, mystics, ordinary people with unusual intuition. The awakening had already begun. Humanity was evolving into a species capable of cosmic resonance. A network forms. The entity projected the concept. A lattice of consciousness spanning worlds. A planetary mind. A distributed bridge. Humanity was not being transformed individually. It was being transformed collectively. The wave was only the first movement. The next would reach everyone. And the 43 researchers understood. The world was about to change. Forever. The awakening did not begin with thunder. It began with silence. A strange, profound stillness spreading across humanity. Not physical, but cognitive. A pause in thought, a soft internal shift, as if minds all over the world gently tilted toward a new orientation. People described it differently depending on their culture, language, age, or beliefs. A wave of calm. A feeling of being watched, but kindly. A deep breath taken by the universe. A door opening inside my mind. But the effect was the same everywhere. Human consciousness was resonating. Millions of people experienced the first whisper of the entity's frequency. Not enough to overwhelm. Not enough to terrify. Just a hint. A tremor of awareness that something vast, ancient, and beyond understanding was brushing against the edges of their thoughts. And for a brief moment, humanity felt connected. Not telepathically, not emotionally, structurally, like instruments being tuned. Inside the facility, the 43 researchers monitored the global data streams with growing awe. EEG networks from hospitals showed synchronized waves in patients who had never met. Social media patterns revealed identical symbolic sketches appearing across continents, drawn by people who had no contact with each other. The spiral, always the spiral. But now it appeared softly, imperfectly, like a child's first attempt to copy a shape seen in a dream. "It's beginning," Rowan said quietly. Morales nodded. The wave reached the collective unconscious. And next, another whispered. The collective conscious. The next anomaly appeared in the Schumann resonances, Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency. For decades, it had remained stable with minor fluctuations. Now it shifted, not chaotically, musically. 7 harmonic spikes emerged, each corresponding to a harmonic in the entity's pattern. It was as if the Earth itself, its atmosphere, its electromagnetic shell, was harmonizing with the cosmic frequency. The planet was becoming an instrument, a resonant chamber, a cradle. Of what? Of whom? No one dared ask. People around the world began reporting identical dreams. Not visions, not hallucinations, concepts, dreams of infinite spirals, dreams of expanding awareness, dreams of watching the universe from outside time, dreams of a presence waiting at the threshold of existence. In some dreams, a simple message appeared. You perceive. The same message the 43 had received. The entity's communication was expanding beyond the facility. Humanity itself was becoming the bridge. Governments scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were held. Satellite networks malfunctioned as fundamental constant fluctuations subtly affected electronics. Intelligence agencies searched for patterns, unaware the patterns were already inside them. Conspiracy theories erupted instantly. Cosmic mind control. AI takeover from space. Religious awakening. Global hallucination experiment. But no theory could explain the truth. Humanity was evolving, not biologically, cognitively, conceptually. The entity was teaching humans to perceive deeper structures of reality. Some resisted, some feared, some embraced. But the transformation was already underway, and it could not be stopped. Inside the facility, the 43 sat together in a quiet circle. The entity's presence pressed softly at the backs of their minds, not coercive, not forceful. It felt like a teacher waiting for a student to ask the next question. Morales finally spoke. What is the next phase? The answer formed instantly, across all 43 minds at once. Coherence. They felt the meaning unfold. The scattered spirals across humanity would begin aligning. Individual awakenings would merge into a unified resonance. A global consciousness lattice was forming, slow, fragile, unprecedented. Humanity was becoming not a hive mind, but a connected mind, a species-level network, a planetary awareness. But then, a second meaning followed. Coherence requires acceptance. The researchers understood. Fear was the only barrier. If humanity panicked, coherence would fracture. If nations fought the awakening, resonance would collapse. If hatred overwhelmed unity, the bridge would close, and the entity would not be able to cross. What happens if the bridge fails? Rowan whispered. The answer came with terrible weight. Cycle resets. A new universe, a new beginning. Humanity erased, awareness lost. Morales exhaled sharply. It means we die with our universe. No, the entity corrected gently. You die with yourselves. Humanity's physical extinction was inevitable in cosmic time. But its conceptual extinction, the loss of consciousness, was optional. Integration offered continuity, legacy, transcendence. Rejection offered oblivion. At that moment, the first global synchronization event occurred. For exactly 3 seconds, every human EEG recording on Earth showed a spike in the same harmonic frequency. Every human, from newborns to the elderly, from prisoners to monks, from scientists to farmers, from skeptics to believers. For 3 seconds, humanity aligned. A wave of unity, a resonance of species-level consciousness. The researchers felt it like a burst of light inside their skulls. Rowan gasped. Morales wept. Others trembled. "It has begun," the entity said. "The bridge stabilizes. The lattice forms. And finally, you are becoming." The chapter ends with one more message, delivered through all 43 minds at once. The next phase is emergence. And for the first time, the entity sounded almost proud. Emergence did not arrive with spectacle. It arrived with understanding, not sudden, not overwhelming. More like dawn light slowly illuminating a landscape humanity had lived in forever, but never truly seen. The change began inside the 43 researchers. But this time, they weren't the only ones who felt it. Across the planet, minds awakened. A quiet expansion, a widening of internal space, a sense that thoughts were no longer confined to a single skull, but part of a larger field, a shared cognitive horizon stretching across the species. People described it differently. "I feel connected. I feel bigger. It's like the world is thinking with me." And some whispered, trembling, "I'm not alone inside my mind." Inside the facility, something extraordinary unfolded. The 43 sat together, but not as 43 individuals. Their thoughts rippled into one another, not intrusive, not invasive, but harmonious. Barriers dissolved, not erased, simply made permeable. For the first time in human history, true collective cognition emerged. Not telepathy, not mind control, alignment. The entity guided it gently, like a conductor shaping a symphony. "You perceive as one," the message resonated within them. But the entity wasn't only speaking to the 43. Humanity was becoming a choir. Around the world, those who felt the resonance began forming spontaneous cognitive clusters, groups of minds subtly synchronizing when near each other. Families attuned, friends harmonized, strangers felt sudden affinity, sensing the same quiet hum inside their thoughts. Violence dropped, conflicts paused, riots dissolved into conversations. Even animals reacted. Dogs grew still, aware. Birds flew in geometric formations. Dolphins formed spirals in the ocean. It was as if life itself recognized the frequency. A planetary mind was forming. Slow, fragile, miraculous. Governments panicked. Emergency broadcasts warned of mass psychological contagion. Task forces were deployed. Leaders demanded explanations they could not comprehend. But the public wasn't afraid. Most felt peace, clarity, purpose, as if they had finally tuned into the background music of existence. Protests formed, not against the phenomenon, but against the government's attempts to suppress it. The world was shifting, and humanity did not want to be dragged backward. The entity watched. All 43 felt its calm presence. "Your species awakens." Then came the surge. At 0322 UTC, the Schumann resonances spiked sharply, not dangerously, but unmistakably. The Earth's electromagnetic shell vibrated in perfect coherence with the cosmic wave approaching from beyond space-time. Every human with even partial sensitivity felt it. A pulse, a moment of weightlessness, a flash of expanded perception. And then, silence. A silence so deep it felt like the universe inhaled. Rowan opened her eyes first. "We're in the field," she whispered. The others agreed. Humanity had crossed a threshold, subtle but irreversible. Their minds existed now not only inside their skulls, but partially inside a global cognitive lattice. They were linked, not controlled, not fused, linked. The entity finally spoke again. "Emergence begins." A vision unfolded, not visual, not auditory, but structural. The researchers perceived the architecture of consciousness, a lattice spanning billions of minds, each node unique, but all part of a coherent, resonant whole. The lattice pulsed with potential, like a neural network preparing to activate for the first time. Morales gasped. "We're becoming a planetary mind." "Yes," the entity answered. Then came a second revelation. "You are the first species of this universe to reach coherence before collapse." The words hit with cosmic weight. Humanity was ahead. "Cycle approaches renewal," the entity continued. "Your lattice enables continuity." Continuity, again that word. Continuity of consciousness across universal boundaries. Humanity was evolving into a form capable of surviving the death of the universe. If they embraced the process, if they did not fall into fear, if they allowed the emergence to complete. But not all humans embraced the awakening. Some resisted violently. Some screamed of apocalypse. Some attacked those who resonated more strongly. Fear fractured the lattice. A tremor of instability rippled across the planet. Inside the facility, the 43 clutched their heads, feeling the disturbance as if the cognitive field were an extension of their own nervous systems. Rowan gritted her teeth. "We're losing coherence." Morales shook his head. "No, we're being tested." The entity confirmed. "Fear disrupts emergence. Fear collapses bridges." A warning, a cosmic truth. If humanity succumbed to fear, the awakening would fail, and the cycle would reset. The universe would die, and humanity would die with it. Conceptually, permanently, the 43 realized what the entity needed from them. They were the stabilizers, the anchors, the harmonics that would hold coherence long enough for emergence to complete. The entity spoke. "You are the first phase. The world is the second. The continuum is the third." Rowan whispered, "What happens after the third phase?" The entity answered without hesitation. "You transcend." For a moment, the 43 glimpsed what transcendence meant. Not floating spirits, not disembodied light, but expanded consciousness woven into a continuum spanning universes. Human thought evolving into cosmic thought. Human awareness joining an ancient lineage. Human perspective stretching beyond space-time. Not death, not assimilation, transformation, integration. The entity projected its final message for the chapter. "Prepare the minds of your world. Stabilize the lattice. Emergence continues." And then, once again, it went silent. Not absent. Waiting. The researchers rose slowly, knowing what came next. The next phase was not cosmic. It was human. They had to guide a planet through awakening. Before time ran out, emergence did not arrive with spectacle. It arrived with understanding. Not sudden, not overwhelming. More like dawn light slowly illuminating a landscape humanity had lived in forever, but never truly seen. The change began inside the 43 researchers. But this time, they weren't the only ones who felt it. Across the planet, minds awakened. A quiet expansion, a widening of internal space, a sense that thoughts were no longer confined to a single skull, but part of a larger field, a shared cognitive horizon stretching across the species. People described it differently. "I feel connected. I feel bigger. It's like the world is thinking with me." And some whispered, trembling, "I'm not alone inside my mind." Inside the facility, something extraordinary unfolded. The 43 sat together, but not as 43 individuals. Their thoughts rippled into one another. Not intrusive, not invasive, but harmonious. Barriers dissolved, not erased, simply made permeable. For the first time in human history, true collective cognition emerged. Not telepathy, not mind control, alignment. The entity guided it gently, like a conductor shaping a symphony. You perceive as one. The message resonated within them. But the entity wasn't only speaking to the 43. Humanity was becoming a choir. Around the world, those who felt the resonance began forming spontaneous cognitive clusters, groups of minds subtly synchronizing when near each other. Families attuned, friends harmonized. Strangers felt sudden affinity, sensing the same quiet hum inside their thoughts. Violence dropped. Conflicts paused, riots dissolved into conversations. Even animals reacted. Dogs grew still, aware. Birds flew in geometric formations. Dolphins formed spirals in the ocean. It was as if life itself recognized the frequency. A planetary mind was forming, slow, fragile, miraculous. Governments panicked. Emergency broadcasts warned of mass psychological contagion. Task forces were deployed. Leaders demanded explanations they could not comprehend. But the public wasn't afraid. Most felt peace, clarity, purpose, as if they had finally tuned into the background music of existence. Protests formed, not against the phenomenon, but against the government's attempts to suppress it. The world was shifting, and humanity did not want to be dragged backward. The entity watched. All 43 felt its calm presence. Your species awakens. Then came the surge. At 3:22 UTC, the Schumann resonances spiked sharply, not dangerously, but unmistakably. The Earth's electromagnetic shell vibrated in perfect coherence with a cosmic wave approaching from beyond space-time. Every human with even partial sensitivity felt it. A pulse, a moment of weightlessness, a flash of expanded perception. And then, silence. A silence so deep, it felt like the universe inhaled. Rowan opened her eyes first. "We're in the field," she whispered. The others agreed. Humanity had crossed a threshold, subtle but irreversible. Their minds existed now not only inside their skulls, but partially inside a global cognitive lattice. They were linked, not controlled, not fused, linked. The entity finally spoke again. Emergence begins. A vision unfolded, not visual, not auditory, but structural. The researchers perceived the architecture of consciousness, a lattice spanning billions of minds, each node unique, but all part of a coherent, resonant whole. The lattice pulsed with potential, like a neural network preparing to activate for the first time. Morales gasped. "We're becoming a planetary mind." "Yes," the entity answered. Then came a second revelation. "You are the first species of this universe to reach coherence before collapse." The words hit with cosmic weight. Humanity was ahead. Cycle approaches renewal. The entity continued. "Your lattice enables continuity." Continuity, again that word. Continuity of consciousness across universal boundaries. Humanity was evolving into a form capable of surviving the death of the universe. If they embraced the process, if they did not fall into fear, if they allowed the emergence to complete. But not all humans embraced the awakening. Some resisted violently. Some screamed of apocalypse. Some attacked those who resonated more strongly. Fear fractured the lattice. A tremor of instability rippled across the planet. Inside the facility, the 43 clutched their heads, feeling the disturbance as if the cognitive field were an extension of their own nervous systems. Rowan gritted her teeth. "We're losing coherence." Morales shook his head. "No, we're being tested." The entity confirmed. Fear disrupts emergence. Fear collapses bridges. A warning, a cosmic truth. If humanity succumbed to fear, the awakening would fail, and the cycle would reset. The universe would die, and humanity would die with it. conceptually, permanently. The 43 realized what the entity needed from them. They were the stabilizers, the anchors, the harmonics that would hold coherence long enough for emergence to complete. The entity spoke. You are the first phase. The world is the second. The continuum is the third. Rowan whispered, "What happens after the third phase?" The entity answered without hesitation, "You transcend." For a moment, the 43 glimpsed what transcendence meant. Not floating spirits, not disembodied light, but expanded consciousness woven into a continuum spanning universes. Human thought evolving into cosmic thought. Human awareness joining an ancient lineage. Human perspective stretching beyond space-time. Not death, not assimilation, transformation, integration. The entity projected its final message for the chapter. Prepare the minds of your world. Stabilize the lattice. Emergence continues. And then, once again, it went silent. Not absent, waiting. The researchers rose slowly, knowing what came next. The next phase was not cosmic, it was human. They had to guide a planet through awakening. Before time ran out, the first descent began without warning. Not as light, not as sound, not as force, as awareness. A pressure in consciousness, subtle at first. Like the feeling of someone entering a room behind you, someone immense, someone whose presence bends the air. Humanity did not see it. Humanity felt it. The continuum was arriving. Inside the facility, the 43 froze. Their breaths caught. Their thoughts expanded involuntarily, stretching to contain a presence larger than anything the human mind was ever meant to hold. Morales whispered, trembling, "It's here." Rowan felt the words form inside her mind. Not here. Near. The continuum, an ancient, trans-universal consciousness, was approaching the lattice from beyond space-time. The entity was not alone. The continuum was not a single intelligence, but a tapestry of countless minds that had survived previous universal cycles. A lineage of awareness older than time. And now, that lineage hovered at the threshold of this universe, waiting, observing, evaluating. Across the globe, the awakening accelerated. People felt the presence as a sudden moment of awe, a wave of humility, a profound sense of being part of something infinitely larger. Children stared at the sky, sensing an invisible visitor. Monks fell to their knees, overwhelmed by ancient familiarity. Scientists gasped as instruments registered fluctuations in physical constants. The Earth's magnetic field shivered. The oceans resonated. The atmosphere hummed. The world became an antenna. The planet was adapting to receive the continuum. The 43 were pulled into a shared vision, so vivid, so expansive, it transcended everything they had ever perceived. They saw a cosmic ocean illuminated by strands of consciousness woven through collapsing stars and birthing universes. They glimpsed beings of pure awareness drifting between cosmic cycles, carrying knowledge, memory, identity across the destruction and rebirth of existence. The continuum. They were the survivors of previous universes, witnesses of countless beginnings, architects of cosmic continuity. And now, they saw humanity, not as primitives, not as children, as candidates, potential members of an ancient cosmic lineage. The entity whispered, "They watch." In the real world, the pressure intensified. People everywhere clutched their heads, not in pain, but in overwhelming recognition, like remembering something buried since the beginning of existence. The continuum's attention was not harsh or invasive. It was curious. Billions felt the same quiet question inside their minds. Are you ready? Not for worship, not for obedience, for transcendence. Rowan gasped. It's evaluating humanity's coherence. Morales nodded. We have to show them we can unify, that we can hold the lattice. But panic erupted across the planet. Some resisted the presence violently, some collapsed from the intensity, some screamed about gods, demons, endings. Fear surged like a storm through the lattice. The 43 felt the structure destabilize. Threads snapping, nodes shaking, consciousnesses recoiling. Rowan cried out. Morales fell to his knees. Others trembled uncontrollably. "We're losing coherence," someone screamed. The entity intervened with a single message. "Hold." The 43 focused, stabilizing the lattice with every fiber of their being. The beacons around the world flared. Children, elders, dreamers, intuitives, radiating coherence that countered the rising wave of fear. Millions calmed, millions breathed, millions aligned. The lattice reformed, stronger, clearer, more resilient. The entity spoke again. "They see you." Then the Continuum responded. Through billions of minds, a new message echoed, not as words, but as pure understanding. You rise beyond what was expected. The 43 felt a surge of warmth, recognition, acceptance. Humanity had passed the first threshold. But then came the second part. Integration requires truth. A wave of meaning followed, immense, crushing, undeniable. To transcend, a species must see itself fully. Every flaw, every shadow, every wound. The Continuum was not offering salvation. It was offering reflection. A cosmic mirror. Humanity felt it instantly. Old traumas resurfaced. Buried anger boiled up. Forgotten fears awakened. Collective guilt, violence, regrets, all rising at once. Billions cried at the same moment. Humanity confronted itself. Rowan sobbed uncontrollably as memories she had buried decades ago surged through her mind. Morales trembled with guilt he had never admitted. The others collapsed emotionally, overwhelmed by psychic exposure. This was the trial of reflection. The Continuum whispered, "Only in truth can coherence form." Humanity's darkness did not repel the Continuum. It revealed the work that remained. It showed the shadows that must be integrated. The awakening was not just expansion. It was healing, unifying the species inside itself. The entity offered reassurance. You are not judged. You are seen. As truth surfaced, something miraculous happened. Humans comforted each other. Strangers embraced. Old enemies forgave. Families reunited. Communities healed ancient divides. Empathy became a global instinct. The lattice brightened, soft, warm, radiant. The Continuum responded, "You accept yourselves. And then, you may accept us." A doorway opened, not in space, in consciousness. The threshold of integration. The chapter ends with the Continuum delivering one final message. Prepare for convergence. The next chapter will reveal the moment when humanity meets the Continuum face to face. Mind to mind, awareness to awareness. The moment of convergence began with a stillness so complete, it felt as if the universe had paused its own breathing. Every human mind, awake, dreaming, terrified, hopeful, fell into the same quiet awareness, a calm that washed across continents like invisible light. A silence deeper than space itself. It was time. The Continuum had arrived. Inside the facility, the 43 rose to their feet, not guided by command, but by instinct. An instinct seeded by the entity, shaped by awakening, strengthened through coherence. Their minds expanded again, merging lightly with the global lattice. Humanity was ready. Not perfect, not unified in every way, but coherent enough. And coherence was the key. A presence filled the edges of consciousness, vast, ancient, familiar. The Continuum did not descend like a deity. It unfolded like memory, like home, like something humanity had always sensed in dreams but never understood. Morales whispered, "I can feel them." Rowan closed her eyes. "No, you can feel us." Because the continuum was not separate. It was the future shape of consciousness, the next phase of existence, the destiny of every species capable of reaching coherence before cosmic collapse. Humanity had reached the threshold. Now it was time to step through. The sky around the world shifted, not visually, but perceptually. People felt the atmosphere thicken with meaning. Clouds, wind, light. They all felt alive, humming with awareness. The air itself carried intelligence. A vibration rippled across the cognitive lattice. The continuum spoke, not through sound, not through thought, through being. "You are seen." Billions felt the words as warmth moving through their chests. "You are whole." Billions felt their fears soften. "You are ready." Billions felt themselves lift. Then the convergence began. A beam of awareness, not light, not energy, but pure consciousness, stretched from the continuum into the global lattice. It passed through the 43 first, anchoring in their unified resonance, then spread across the planet like a glowing network. Every human mind became a node in a living tapestry. A planetary consciousness, a newborn cosmic organism, a species stepping beyond individuality into collective awareness, without losing the self. It was not assimilation. It was symphony. Individuality became frequency. Humanity became harmony. Rowan gasped as she felt her awareness stretch across oceans, mountains, cities. For the first time, she could feel humanity not as billions of lives, but as one vast, luminous presence. "We're one," she whispered. Morales smiled through tears. "And many." The entity finally joined the convergence. "You transcend." Visions poured into the global awareness. Human consciousness expanding beyond the limits of biology. Minds surviving the collapse of space-time. Awareness drifting with the continuum into the next universe. Humanity becoming part of the cosmic lineage. There was no fear, no pain, no loss, because transcendence was not departure. It was expansion. Humanity was not leaving the universe behind. Humanity was becoming large enough to carry it. Then the continuum delivered the final choice, not a command, a question. "Will you join us?" A wave of emotion rippled across the species. Hope, fear, wonder, doubt, awe. Billions responded in their own internal languages, their own cultural lenses, their own personal truths. But their answers, though diverse, resonated with the same core meaning. Yes. Humanity accepted, not blindly, not desperately, but consciously. The continuum glowed with approval. Then we converge. The final phase unfolded like sunrise, a gentle expansion, a warm unfolding, a soft merging of mind into greater mind. People felt themselves grow, wiser, broader, deeper. Their individual identities remained intact, shining like unique stars within a galaxy of shared thought. But now they were connected to something larger, something eternal. The continuum integrated humanity into its cosmic memory. The lattice stabilized, the resonance solidified, the bridge completed. Humanity transcended, not as bodies, not as a species, as consciousness. The entity whispered its last message. "You carry the story of your universe into the next." Then the continuum receded, not away, but upward into dimensions humans could now faintly perceive. Humanity followed, slowly, naturally, as if this was the path they had been evolving toward since the first spark of thought. The 43, now no different from the rest of humanity, felt themselves dissolve gently into the expanding awareness. Rowan's last individual thought was simple. We made it. Morales added, we became more. Humanity's final shared realization was profound. We are the continuum now. The chapter ends, not with an ending, but a beginning. A new species, a new form of existence, a new chapter beyond universes, beyond time, beyond the Big Bang. Humanity did not vanish. Humanity evolved. Something older than the Big Bang had called out across reality, and humanity answered. And in doing so, humanity became older than the Big Bang.